Hi everyone, my name is Catherine Tucker Patterson. I'm a librarian at Fulton Library, and today I'm going to give you all a quick guide to finding and using scholarly articles. So before we get started, we kind of need to know what a scholarly article is so that we can know how to find and identify them and use them in our research. So these articles are usually written by experts in their field, whether that's a professor, a scholar, a researcher, or other kind of expert. And they write these articles to either make an academic argument, meaning they're going to give you a lot of background research and then say why they think their opinion is correct, or to report the results of research, meaning they're going to show you how they studied a specific thing that they wanted to find out more about and what the results of that study were, and then probably what the implication of those results are for the wider conversation. Because scholarly articles are just one voice in a larger conversation about a topic. So they all build on each other and they use each other's research to kind of help determine what the truth of an issue is, or to make those academic arguments about an issue. You may have heard the term peer-reviewed. So a peer-reviewed scholarly article or a peer-reviewed academic article, those terms are kind of used interchangeably, has been read and edited by other experts before the article is published. So other experts in the field are kind of doing that vetting for you and making sure that the author's research kind of vibes with what they're saying. So how do we find scholarly articles? The easiest place to find scholarly articles is in library databases. Not everything in them is scholarly or peer-reviewed, so you'll have to use the filters, usually the source type filter or that scholarly peer-reviewed sources filter, to make this a little bit easier. You can also find scholarly articles on Google Scholar, which is at scholar.google.com. If you actually access that through the library database list, you'll see more content that's available to you. And just a reminder that searching databases can be a little bit strange, and for help you should contact a librarian or take a look at the library research tutorial and research guides. So how can we tell if something is a scholarly article? Well, when we find things in a database, it's usually a little bit easier to identify them because we have these really lovely records that kind of give us a ton of information about the article. And you can use the link in the source to kind of investigate the publication where this article was found. So in this example, we have Educational Gerontology. That just sounds like a scholarly journal, right? Sounds a little bit boring, but what we can do is we can go ahead and Google that source and make sure that it's an academic journal. We can see if it's peer-reviewed or not. And what we want to look for when we're doing that is the aims and scope of the journal, the peer review policy, and the editing policy. And those will all give us hints as to whether or not it's an academic journal. If we find a scholarly article in the wild, some things that we want to look for are a long bibliography or a lot of references or footnotes or endnotes, so a lot of places where the author has cited a different source. We want to look for an abstract. An abstract can really tip us off that something is a scholarly article. And maybe even looking at the language that the authors are using, their jargon, whether they're using really academic language, that usually tips us off. And one last thing we can do is kind of investigate that author. So we can go ahead and Google them, see if they're an expert, and that's not always going to give us that indication, but along with those other attributes, that might give us a little bit more information about that article. So right now, I'm just going to do a quick Google search for social media and mental health and see the kind of results that Google's going to turn up for me. So if you're doing your research this way and you're not sure what kind of source you're seeing, I'm going to give you a few tips to figure that out. So you can see right up here, we have this heading that says Scholarly Articles for Social Media and Mental Health. That's really helpful. That's going to actually link us out to Google Scholar. And you can see, because I'm logged into UVU's Wi-Fi, that it's showing me everything I have access to from UVU. And these are going to mostly be scholarly articles. You can see I'm not including patents or citations. So most of these are going to be scholarly articles or books. But if I'm looking through my Google search results, and I come across something like this result, online social networking and mental health, I can go ahead and click on that source, and it's going to bring me to a web page that looks pretty much like a scholarly article. So we can see that it has an abstract, and that's going to give us one hint. We've got our author, who is a medical doctor and a PhD, so we've got a little bit more information about him, and we can see that he works at a university, so maybe that's going to tip us off that it's a scholarly article. And as we kind of scroll through this article, we're going to see a structure that suggests it might be a bit scholarly. So we've got our nice little headings, and then we've got a lot of links to different articles and examples of research. And if we were to scroll to the end, we'll see that we have this list of references here that mostly includes other scholarly articles, and it's quite long. So I would be confident in saying that this is a scholarly article. One other thing that we didn't do that we could do is go ahead and look at this journal title, Cyber Psychology, Behavior, and Social Networking. Go ahead and give that a Google and just see what we can find out about the publication. So if we were to take a look at a different result, like maybe this second one right here, this helpguide.org, we can see it's coming from that .org, so probably a nonprofit. Our last one came from a .gov. Those extensions don't always tip us off as to what we're about to see. And we can see that we have kind of maybe an introduction, maybe not an abstract, about the role social media plays in mental health. We do have these different headings, but it seems like we're getting some bulleted lists, just a few links out, but these seem to be definitions. We can see the word FOMO is used in this article, so maybe not as scholarly of language. And I'm just going to go ahead and scroll down. Yeah, now we have some tips. So this is seeming to me like it is not a scholarly article. We can look into our authors here, Lawrence Robinson and Melinda Smith. They might be great authorities in how social media affects mental health. They may be, experts in the field of mental health that have written this article, but I'm not seeing any links out to references. I didn't really see that abstract. The language is a bit casual. There's a lot of pictures. So I'm going to go ahead and determine that this is actually a popular source, which doesn't mean it's a bad source. It just has a little bit less academic authority than a scholarly article. So we could use this source to find some keywords that we could use to find other scholarly articles. We could use it as kind of a background source, or we could even use quotes from this source to support our argument with the knowledge that it is not scholarly or peer-reviewed. That's just fine. You're welcome to use popular sources in your research, but if all of your sources are popular, your argument is going to be just a little bit weaker. So once we can tell something is scholarly, how do we actually read and dissect those articles? Librarians have come up with a few strategies for reading scholarly articles and making them a little bit easier to understand because they can be quite difficult. So we actually recommend a slightly out of order way of reading a scholarly article. So first, we'll always read that abstract. It will usually give us a great idea of what the researchers were studying or arguing and usually what they found. So it'll give you kind of a big spoiler, so you're not in the dark for the entire article. I always like to read the introduction first because that's going to give me any needed context for the study or the argument. And then I skip all the way to the end to that discussion and or the conclusion. So if there's research being done, if it's the report of a research study, it will have a discussion and sometimes implications and a conclusion to kind of let you know why it's important that they actually did this research, or why it's important that they made this argument. And then once I know what they were looking to study and the context for it, and what they found out and why it's important, I can kind of go through the body of the article and pick out any facts or quotes that I think might be useful. Usually I actually skim the body of the article if I feel I have a pretty good understanding of the article itself. Sometimes there will be sections in the body called the methodology and the results, and those are for more of those reports of research, and often there will be a lot of math, a lot of charts, graphs, a lot of numbers involved to kind of show you how they set up their study. And if that doesn't make perfect sense to you, that's okay, as long as you kind of understand what they studied, what they found, and why that's important. And at the end of an article, I like to skim the references to see if there's any other articles that they cited that might be helpful for my research. And if I see the same article coming up a lot, I will usually go and explore and see if I can find that article, because it's obviously very important to the conversation around my topic. Just a few other tips and tricks. Definitely take notes as you read. That's been really helpful for me. I always look for what the overall argument is, what conclusions the authors have made. That's where I keep track of any of my quotes and statistics, but it's also where I look for limitations to that research or gaps in that research that I may need to explore. So that's how I keep track of what other articles I might need to find to complete my research. If I don't understand something as I'm reading, I will always Google it. Background research is very important. It can kind of help you to build your knowledge of a subject, even if I'm not going to end up citing, a Wikipedia article or a site that I found on Google that kind of gave me some background information. It's still really important for me to know kind of what's going on with those terms and sometimes subtopics that I don't understand. And just as we did with those two examples of results, research the article, look up the author, look up the journal, and read those references. So how do we actually use scholarly articles in our research? One question that students often ask me is, why do I need so many articles, right? Why did my professor ask me to find 8 or even 10 scholarly articles? And that's because there will never be one perfect article that describes exactly what you're looking for. That's the article or the research project that you're writing. Often students ask me to find them an article that says exactly, I need the pros of social media for students who are taking online classes during coronavirus. And I may not be able to find an article that describes that exactly, if that's the argument that they want to make, right? I might be able to find some articles about the pros of social media. I might find some articles about isolation during coronavirus. I might find articles about the interactions that students make in online classes. And when I put all of those articles together, they actually form a conversation, and they kind of construct my overall argument. That's why we search for so many articles. They all contribute different things to our scholarly argument. As you're searching for articles, be thinking about what kinds of information you still need and whether that information can be answered by a scholarly source or even a popular source. Are you finding gaps that need to be explored? Are you finding things in the research that just don't seem like they've been fully explained? Keep those things in mind, or keep a running list of those things so you know where to search next. Alright, thank you so much for watching this video. If you have other questions about finding scholarly articles, or if you're wondering whether your article is scholarly or not, whether it's peer-reviewed or not, whether it's a popular source or an academic source, you can go ahead and ask a librarian at any time. I would recommend using the chat so you can drop some links and we can help you determine whether or not something is scholarly. If that chat is closed, it usually means the library is also closed, so you can go ahead and use this contact form to reach out to us, and that'll just send us an email and we'll get right back to you in the morning. And then if you need a little bit of extra help with your research, you are welcome to set up an appointment with a librarian. These are 30-minute virtual appointments, and if you just need some help with some general research, you can go ahead and use the general research help drop-down. You don't even have to pick a librarian. You can just say you have no preference, find a time and date that works for you to meet, fill out a quick form, and you can have that 30-minute virtual appointment with a librarian who can help you with all of the steps in the research process. Thanks so much, and good luck with your research.